My Victory Lane speech tonight talking about specials versus weekly racing programs and a little bit of a cautionary tale that I hope everyone takes the time to listen to. All right, I mentioned earlier in the opening here in our green flag waving session that I got a post up at k985.com about the different specials that I found. Now, I'm sure I don't have all of them. There's 97 different specials in the state of Iowa, starting in late March until the early October, and that encompasses 197 days. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, I just love specials. I'm just like everybody else. I love to go to the specials, but I'm a little concerned that maybe we're heading down a path that might be one we want to take a look at. When you take a look at growing up, a lot of the race fans that I hang around with, because we're not young anymore. We're not old, but we're not young anymore. Grew up going Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights to the weekly track. And then my dad, for example, took his car and driver maybe a half dozen county fair specials and a few other money races, maybe 20, 25 specials. The large encompassing laps was on a weekly program. So when you have 97 different specials, basically you could run specials and that's it. Is it really a special anymore, or is it just advanced weekly racing? So the question is, can we survive continuing going down this path? Now, there's a lot of people that are saying, no, we can't. Yes, we can. No, we can't. Well, I think, yes, we can, but there's a caveat on top of that. I think we need to take a lesson from what NASCAR has traveled. A lot of dirt track fans are bad-mouthing NASCAR, dissing them because they forgot their roots. I think we are on the edge of forgetting our roots as well with dirt track racing. So what is it exactly that NASCAR has become? Well, let's see. So what does 97 races in the state of Iowa have to do with NASCAR? Well, if you remember, NASCAR started out on grassroots, weekly racing. Well, it wasn't really weekly. It became travel. There were small tracks. And eventually along the way, NASCAR grew. So did its expectations with its fans and its drivers and also its corporate sponsors. The monster got hungrier and hungrier until it had to take a bite of a bigger piece of pie. And eventually, a southern thing became an East Coast thing, and the monster eventually travels across the country now, devouring everything it can in the racing world. What's next when that appetite is full? Well, if you ask me, and this is just my opinion, NASCAR is positioning itself to become a global racing leader. If you don't believe me, why would they have gone to Japan? Why would they go to Mexico? Why would they go to Canada? Did you know there's a NASCAR Euro Series? Yes, even in Europe, they're racing NASCAR stuff. All right, so what am I getting at? Well, we're starting to lose touch with our grassroots. Our grassroots started with weekly racing. That's what also is our feeder series into these bigger specials. I love going to specials. I like to see how the guys that I see on a weekly basis compare to the guys on the other side of the state, or I read in headlines on the internet. I want to see how they match up. But if they're always doing it, that novelty of that matchup isn't there anymore. And we're starting to have some specials now to the point where it's big dollar specials. And again, I say we can have it survive, but we need to make sure we remember where we are at with grassroots racing, weekly racing. That's the feeder series. That's also where the young fans come in. That's where also the young aspiring drivers come from. If we don't have that anymore, pretty soon your local track is only going to run 1, 2 races. And then eventually, who's going to go then? Well, by and by, the local guys and gals that are fans or supporters of the racing is going to fall by the wayside. Yes, there's an argument to be had whether or not there's enough money to support weekly racing based on the payouts, but also based on what the drivers are spending. But I'll be honest with you, that's another conversation for another day. I don't want to go down that road. It is a road I think we need to travel, and a lot of sanctioning bodies and drivers are going down it. I just want to make sure when we drive down that road, we don't have road rage and have a conversation that's very civil about what needs to be done. And just because somebody doesn't agree with you, don't hate on them. That seems to be the thing. Everyone bullies. And that's another thing that is ruining the sport. Bullying. Well, you don't like the sanction I like. Screw you. Well, who wants to be a part of that? And if weekly racing becomes bi-weekly, monthly racing, who wants to go hang around with somebody saying, screw you? So, if there's a special, and that is your life, love it. Go out and enjoy it. But make sure you support weekly racing at the same time before that life support gets pulled on weekly racing, feeding to the bigger series. Both can survive, but we, as race fans and individuals and supporters of racing, have to support both in order for it to work. Well, that's my rant for the night. Victory Lane. That's twofold, Bucky. Jack Roof checking in. Tracks can't survive without the cars, and the cars can't survive without the tracks to run them. and at the fans to watch them. It simply isn't economical for cars to run weekly shows. See more. I mentioned that earlier, Jack. I don't know if you're just checking in. That's a whole nother conversation, and I understand that, and I agree with you that that is something that does need to be addressed. In fact, I noticed a lot of people are addressing it now. I noticed Dana Benning. I mention him simply because that's where I work on Saturday nights. Had a special meeting in the fall and invited late model drivers to come up. IMCA even came up and talked about that program. And I know they've had other meetings along the way, and other people along the way have been talking about it. And yes, it does need to be addressed, but that wasn't the conversation that I wanted to have tonight. I just wanted to make sure us, as those that are in the racing world, make sure we do support weekly racing, because if we don't, the specials will fall by the wayside. And along the way, the economics will even come more lopsided, because if weekly racing, special races basically become the weekly, then that threshold of money spent still continues to grow. We are not suppressing and learning to take our appetite in small doses. We're simply just adding to the pie. We're not learning to eat right. So hopefully along the way we can create more conversations like this. Thanks, everybody, for checking in tonight. It has been a ton of fun, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have putting it together. We will do it again next year, the 3rd Annual Iowa's Virtual Dirt Track Classic, and maybe more of these forums. Maybe we'll create a forum or a news type of things down the road. For all of us at Town Square Media Waterloo, Bill Caldwell Ford in Hudson, my name is Bucky Doren.